Good afternoon. If you could just take your seats so we can get started with the panel. Hi, and welcome if you're tuning in or joining us here in the room at Politico Competitive Europe Week. My name is Jan Chansky, and I'm a senior policy editor at Politico. And welcome to the policy spotlight discussion, Pedal to the Metal, Ramping Up Manufacturing on Green Road Mobility. This panel was, we put it together weeks and months ago, but actually the timing worked out really, really well. We're at an inflection point for Europe's largest industry in the core of economies from Germany and Italy to Slovakia and Hungary. The car industry is facing some enormous headwinds. We're seeing collapsing sales of EVs, rising competition from Chinese entrants, and looming EU climate regulations. This isn't happening in a vacuum. The driver for all these changes is the need to tackle climate change. Transport emissions account for about a fifth of global CO2 emissions, and the consequences of those emissions can be seen everywhere from Saxony to North Carolina, what's happened in the last days in the States. The EU is acting. It's pledged to cut emissions from transport by 90% by mid-century, but that's easier said than done. And I think that our panel should give us some real insights into the impact of these policies on the car industry. A brief reminder to talk about us on X or the social media of your choice with the hashtag Politico Competitive Week. And now I'd like to introduce our panelists. At the far left is Luca De Meo, the CEO of Renault Group and the president of car lobby ASEA. We have then Virginijus Sinkevičius, who's an MEP with the Greens from Lithuania, vice chair of the TRAN committee and former sustainability commissioner. And Georges Gilles Quinet, the vice prime minister and minister of mobility of Belgium. Welcome to the panel. In this panel, we won't have questions from the audience, so we're just going to be talking among ourselves. I'd like to start with Luca. You've been pretty clear about the EU's 2035 phase-out of new CO2 emitting cars and of the consequences of the tightened CO2 targets going into effect next year. I think you've mentioned the sum of potentially 15 billion euros that the fines could cost the industry next year. Is the EU helping or hurting the car industry with the climate regulations?
I mean, I think that's a big question, and I think it could do both. Actually, it could help if we find a way to approach strategically the whole issue. It could hurt if we see a form of rigidity in the application of the thing, because the fact is that since those rules, those deadlines, those fines were decided, a lot of things have happened in the world. So as it would happen in any company, in any organization, you should be able to just recognize what happened and adjust the thing. So we haven't been clear recently on the 2035, because I think this is a discussion and we need some time. But for sure, we are clear about the fact that we are entering 2025 with an electric market that's half the size of what it should be to hit the targets for next year. And based on the rules of the game and our calculation estimation, it's a minimum of 15 billion euros of fines that the industry will have to pay, which we would divert from other investment, or we have to stop like 2.8 million cars, combustion engine cars. That means 8 plants in Europe to actually make the math, or we have to buy credits from Chinese and Americans, pure EV players, to avoid the fines. That's the story. So what we are advocating for is a form of flexibility that, of course, the European Community, the Commission will have to decide, because otherwise we go in that kind of direction. And this is a fact, right?
Renault, are you going to make the targets next year?
Everybody will strive to make the targets. Right. But in any case, at that level of the market, everybody, it will cost, in a way or another, it will cost resources, for sure. Because what is going to happen? You're going to try to lower down the price of electric cars or put, let's say, make discounts on the thing, destroying residual value, so killing the baby at its birth. That's what you can do. Or, as I said, we have to avoid producing cars where we make money. Or we have to pay someone else credit for credits. So it's money that goes out of the window, basically. So everybody's entering the year with the idea that we have to hit the target, obviously.
I'd like to ask the other panelists, is there a need to tweak next year's targets? Some climate advocates, like Transport and Environment, feel that these targets are reachable and that the industry is trying to protect sort of lucrative SUV sales from combustion engine models to protect their economic model, but that the EU's target is actually reachable. Virginis, maybe?
Well, I think that's the trick here, that on one hand, you want to keep the targets and keep industries motivated, as they are, as I understand still that they are striving to reach the targets. So target should be there. It is reachable, but then of course the big question is at what price? If the number that we bounce off, again, I would need to look at it, 15 billion, that's a lot of money, knowing the situation in which industry finds itself now. Under huge pressure from China and from the US as well. Industry that probably enjoyed many, many years of excellence, of leadership in the world, and now losing position. And losing that position can happen very quickly. I always call it a Nokia effect, where sort of Nokia believe that they are so big that they are in the pockets of everyone around the world. And then in 6 years, Europe lost 90% of the smartphone market. And not possible to catch up. Well, that's only Nokia. If you look at the impact of automotive industry, how that would affect the whole Europe because of the supply chains, how they are widely spread. I was a Minister of Economy in Lithuania, and one of my dreams was to actually have automotive manufacturing in Lithuania, but we are too small. So then we decided that car might have, between 5,000, 6,000 parts, so we can be manufacturers of parts. So we were very successful in attracting those foreign direct investments into country. Same happened in Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia, and so on. So, of course, countries would be affected hugely if our automotive industry is keep on losing that position. And that's not only the environmental targets, it's probably also a bit of a shift which happens with the industry, that it's shifting from the combustion engine into a battery and software, where you need to find a completely new niche. Battery is the key, which is majority of your costs now. And you don't have supply chains, so you need to secure supply chains. That's another thing where we need to work together. And then the software. Because if you look, if you drive electric vehicle, software, one of the key issues, basically the easier to use, the more sort of you feel better in that car. And then all the other details on which I think we focused a lot and presented as our automotive excellence. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter that much anymore, because we see that these Chinese brands, which I don't even know names, they can put a bigger screen, they can put a seats with whatever you want to carve out in it, and etc. And they don't charge you extra 5,000 euros on a model. So all of those details, they really pushing our industry into a corner, and I think we need a very fair conversation here with the industry as regards, so if the targets are reachable, what would be the cost and how our competitiveness would look like, because I think, our mission is, of course, to save industry, to make it thriving, and on opposite actually win over a China's market and the US market as well, or at least not to lose the positions that we have.
So potential flexibility on the side of
At
the
least
EU
a very
institutions.
honest discussion.
Okay. Georges, Belgium is feeling some of these impacts itself. There's talk of shutting down the Audi factory in Belgium. Do you have a sense that the economic cost of the EV transition is potentially too high?
I'm not sure we have the choice. I'm not sure it's better to delay, to ask for a delay. I feel that if we delay this objective, this would be a very bad signal for the European industry. The EU must build the cars of the future, not of the past. And this is the strength of China. They think in decades. They are ready for the future. We are not. In 2021, in April, I was with our Prime Minister in the Audi factory in Forêt, here in Belgium, because they had built 8 million cars there. And I told in my speech two things to the responsible of the factory. The first one was that I was very happy as a Belgian minister to have such a factory in Belgium, because we have very efficient workers, and as a Minister of Mobility, I have made the necessary investment to strengthen the factory's rail connection, so that components can arrive by train, and assembled cars could be shipped all over Europe by the same route. Then I was very happy. Second thing I told them, I think we have a problem. Those e-cars are too big, too expensive. I need for the future more little cars, safer cars. Because if you talk to people in the street, it's not affordable. It's too expensive to buy an e-car today. And we have to make this change with the European car industry. My personal dream as Minister of Mobility would be to see everyone on a bike or in a train, but I know that's not possible. We still will need cars. In the meantime, electrification is probably the only option to quickly decarbonize the road sector. Even we have to do it in a different way than today. E-cars are much too big and too expensive for the people. And if we have to modulate the ban before 2035, because a part of the industry or the supply chain and infrastructure are not ready for, I think we should be very strict in the condition.
So you're open to the idea of modifying 2035 if the industry is under
all
pressure?
Condition.
But there are some conditions where you think that it
yes,
that it could
I think we have to impose binding consumption objectives, like maximum 3 liters for 100 kilometers or even less. And this would incentivize the European industry to propose light and efficient vehicles and push innovation. And we have to innovate as European industry, and there is a lack of innovation. If it's difficult, it's not a reason not to make the progress. If we don't progress, we will lead all the market to China.
difficult thing to finesse. The need to progress, but also not to kill the industry. So it's a
yes, I think, but we need an industry that produces lighter and safer car, because we consumer in capacity to buy these cars. The problem today.
Segues nicely to you, because Renault has with Dacia, you're actually trying to hit that lower price target. What's your assessment of this criticism that a lot of car makers face, of that they have in the electric transition, they've gone for very expensive, very heavy SUV-style cars, and that they've left the bottom end of the market open to Chinese penetration, and that they've sort of miscalculated on where they should be targeting their.
I think there is a lot of confusion into this thing. In fact, the reason why cars are getting more expensive and bigger in Europe doesn't start with the EV thing. It's actually all the regulation push the weight and the size of the car up, and of course people buying that. So we actually produce what the people want, okay? But the regulation actually pushed weight, cost, complexity of products up. This is a fact. And in fact, companies like ours that have always been very strong on doing small cars find themselves in trouble, right? So brands like Renault, Peugeot, Citroën, Fiat are all suffering, even in the last 20 years. Now, in the case of electric cars, you have to understand one thing. It is just like physical, okay? At the certain level of density, of energy density of a battery, if people want to do 1,000 kilometers like they do with a diesel car, okay, then you need a big battery. Therefore, you need space between the wheels, unless I don't put the battery on the roof, okay? So if the people want a car that is cheaper than combustion engine, well, where the value of the battery, 80% is the raw material, which price and cost we don't control because it's in the hands of the Chinese, okay? And you want to do 1,000 kilometers, this is technically impossible. So even in China, the Chinese are meant to be kind of, I mean, are supposed, based on what you're saying, to be actually specialists of small cars. This is not true. You go to China, they do huge cars with 3 meters between the wheels to put a 100 kilowatt battery. Okay, this is the kind of specialty of the Chinese right now. They do a lot of SUVs, a lot of big sedans, right? You know, you were referring about Nokia thing. I mean, you are in the situation where we are moving from a Nokia to an iPhone, and you're asking us to have the iPhone cheaper than the Nokia, with the battery that works, even with the big screen, longer than the Nokia. That was not the case. I remember, I'm old enough, I remember that the Nokia would cost 350 euro and the iPhone the double. And actually, the iPhone battery didn't last even 1 day, okay? So that's the situation we are in. At the beginning, electric car will cost more to buy, not to use, yeah? And if the people are not ready to make any compromise on the usage of electric cars versus combustion engine, then the thing is not going to work, which is exactly what is happening, okay? I buy totally the argument of the minister when he says we need to do small cars. Look, I'm your man, because what I'm doing right now, this very moment, I'm launching the Renault 5. I actually set the whole system of Renault in France on electric vehicle. So there's no way back for me, okay? This is an induced investment, 20 billion euro in the northern part of France, close to here to Belgium. 2 assembly plants, 2 gigafactories, software center, 80% of the supplier in 300 kilometers, all the ecosystem built, and you know the cars are going to the dealers right now. I hope that the thing will work, okay? Because otherwise I'm in trouble. And with the Renault 5, we actually break the barrier, and we start to have a car that costs 25,000 euro, okay? And the second thing I'm doing, as you're talking about Central Europe, we will do in a year and a half, we'll do the Twingo, okay? And we will do a car below 20,000 euro, electric. But why I can do a car for 20,000 euro? Because the battery, because it's a small car for city usage, is gonna have maybe 250 kilometers, 270 kilometer range. For that kind of usage is okay. So I can put a battery below 30 kilowatt, and then you can do a car that is cheaper to produce than the comparable combustion engine car. So one of the things that is missing in the whole regulation in Europe is a system to make sure that we can do profitably small cars again. you know, the democratization of mobility in Europe didn't happen with the Mercedes S-Class kind of cars. It happened with Cinquecento, with the Renault 4 chevaux, with Käfer in Germany, etc., etc. So we need to, there is a new phase of mobility. We need to go back and be able to produce more cars. And by the way, the Chinese, in that specific segment, they are not good, and we are. So we are advocating for that. There's a paper that is just published now, kind of a scientific paper that proves that we can apply the K-car concept that the Japanese have made very successful in Europe, and this is going to create jobs. It's going to allow us to completely localize the whole supply chain in Europe. We can source the whole thing, and we can do something that you know, that makes mobility, electric mobility, clean mobility, affordable for the people.
So are you relatively confident that your company and more broadly the European car industry can face down the threat of Chinese car makers? Do you need the tariff barrier that the EU is putting in to protect you for a while? Or?
Well, look, this is, I think the way I see it is a different discussion. I have nothing to say on a process that is almost a legal process, right? So you have rules of the game defined by the WTO. You have watchdog in the European Commission. The guy make their inquiry, they may come to some conclusion, and then they decide to make some countermeasure. This is just, I have nothing to comment on that, okay? The real question is, are we going to be competitive versus the Chinese industry in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, in cost, in technology? That's the real question we should ask ourselves. How we make sure, okay, import duties or non-import duties, that we are on par with them. These guys, they started one generation before us. They started 2010, 2011 to really push. The old system pushed, okay? The old China took automotive industry as one of the 5 top industry to organize their global economic conquest, okay? Thanks God, for the first time, Mario Draghi is speaking in his report about industry, very good news, and we have a chapter of automotive, you know, into the thing. I'm very happy. That makes me all optimistic. And from there, we have to start to do a strategy. And this is a team sport, okay? We cannot be the only one that pay for a system that doesn't work. Because you can say we have obliged condition, etc. Why don't you do also your job as a politician, okay? You have to put us around the table, the mining industry, the chemistry industry, the infrastructure industry, the energy industry, et cetera, and say, you do that, you do that, you do that. Because without infrastructure and charging, I cannot sell cars, okay? Simply. If I can't secure competitive cobalt, nickel, and manganese, I'm not going to be able to beat the Chinese on the thing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a very good opportunity to do something together with the regulator, with the politician, and where you have science, NGOs, trade unions, economical actor to decide and discuss a strategy with flexibility mechanism where you know, something doesn't work, you correct, you do a thing, you delay a little bit, and we don't have to talk about this kind of, you know, dogmatic thing. We decided that 2035 and then it's like this and whatever, because in companies, you know what happens? We do a 10-year plan all the time. And then we do a midterm plan, 3, 4, 5 years. And then we do the budget every year. Why do we do that? Because 50% of the thing that we wrote in the 10-year plan actually didn't happen. So we have continuously to correct. This is strategy. This is strategy. And that's what we have to do in Europe altogether.
Georges, what do you think of that? Is there a need for governments to sort of step in, have consultations with industry, tweak or adapt the targets, and set up some sort of a broader industrial strategy for making the industry survive?
It's always a good thing to have a consultation with economic actors, but economic actors have also to do the right choice. Mm-hmm. And it was not always the case in the European car industry. European car industry made big benefits after COVID, and they decided to give dividends. And at the same time, in China, they decided to invest a lot in research and development. And it's the reason why they China took the place of the European industry. This is what we have to change. I think public money has to go to infrastructure and collective transport. We have also to speak to the European industry because, as I said, for me, better a train or a bike, but we need cars in Europe. It's very important economic actors with a lot of job, with a lot of profit. Then we have to speak together, yes, to have a common strategy, to have lighter and safer cars, less expensive cars, more affordable cars. We have to find also solution for the critical materials we need to build an e-cars because it's a huge environmental problem. You have to reuse it, to recycle it, and to make an economic European system, making it possible to produce e-cars for the future. But the system today is working wrong. As I said, but you agree, we have too big cars. If I talk to people in the street, not a minister with a company car, not a banker with a company car, but a teacher, a worker, it's impossible to buy an e-car today. And they are against the concept of e-car. They want to keep their car with some fuels that they can go to the tanking station. And yes, we have to make it better in discussion with the economic sector. We have to invest more in research and development to give less dividend. And it's the mistake of the European car industry in the last 20 years, I think. And we have to make it better today.
Thanks. Our car reporter, Jordan Dahl, who is sitting right there, a few weeks ago took a Polestar, not a Renault, unfortunately, and drove it from Belgium to Hungary, just to take a look at the charging infrastructure and what the experience was like. And she came to the conclusion that there was a fairly large amount of charging infrastructure, but that the delays in charging were longer than anticipated and got worse the further east you got. The EU has talked a lot about building out charging infrastructure, which would deal with some of these issues of range anxiety. It's not really hitting the targets. What more should be done in that area to try to assuage some of these worries that people might actually buy this smaller battery car and not feel range anxiety?
Oh, well, so there are, couple of segments. First of all, it's not only that you build infrastructure, which is I think Eastern Europe is still worse than in the West, but still, if you look, I think the way how much it actually needs to be installed a year, we are probably around 3-4 times less every year of the charging infrastructure. But plus, you need that infrastructure to come closer to people's homes. And it's one thing when you live in a house where you can install it, and completely different if you live in a flat. How are you going to deal with that? Offices and etc. Because driving electric vehicle is a completely different experience. So you forget about the gas stations when you drive an electric vehicle. But then it's not only about the long range, which we speaking so much, but it's also can you charge it efficiently at your work, at your home, and basically have it constantly charged. So here, I think one of the key things which member states could use as part was the RRF funds into infrastructure. Some did quite well, the others not so well. Then, of course, the chargers. We also, cannot speak as the same thing because they are different, and charging time is also different, and that matters a lot. So there are many things that still needs to be done, and when we speak about it, EV as a silver bullet, I'm not 100% sure that it's a silver bullet for a future mobility, because it has so many question marks. It might be a transition into something else. What we need to reach is climate neutrality.
What sort of something else?
Well, we have fuel cell, which is being developed. Unfortunately, it became too expensive and was dropped. There is discussions always on hydrogen and etc. So we cannot, and I hope that automotive industry as well doesn't lock itself only into EV, where unfortunately we actually losing the ground on EV. When we talk about the Chinese competition here, I agree fully. When I was in China, I was surprised to see Audi A4L with it. So they love long cars there. Cars are bigger, and if you look at the Chinese car that are here, why they are taking markets so successfully? Because what users get is, let's say, for a fairly competitive price, a huge SUV pumped up with all the things that, if you buy a European manufacturer's car, it will cost you probably 100K, while the Chinese can deliver it for 40, 50. And that's the biggest difference. The huge cars, it's not a small cars that are being delivered, but we're losing the ground on EV. So, I wouldn't focus it only, on this as the silver bullet technology. Because, as you've said rightfully so, there are so many players that also have to do their role in order to provide infrastructure, enough electricity for everyone to charge their cars. Then, on top of that, of course, when we speak about mobility, and that was one of the reasons why I chose Tran Committee, is because it has so much social green in it that it's constantly overlooked. And the social aspect is extremely important. And when we speak about teachers, nurses, and their mobility, of course, on one hand, cities, states must provide mobility, which would be comfortable, which would get them from point A to B. But when it comes to a personal car, at the end of the day, you have to look at the costs of a long term using it. Because let's take Belgium as an example. To register a EV, it's 0 taxes and then 0 yearly tax. To register, let's say, Toyota, which would be petrol engine, it's around 2,000 euros and then 300 euros every year. And that's, that's where your car haven't left even your yard yet. And then if you look the electricity price, kilowatt, it's around what, 17 cents, depending, let's say, on your provider, but let's say, and the fuel price is around 160. So, I mean, if you look the whole life cycle, it's cheaper to have EV, to drive EV, than the petrol car. But question is, of course, affordability at first place when you come into a market, and that's a bit of another issue why we are at the point where a teacher and a nurse cannot make a decent living. But I think let's leave it out for now.
My understanding is that you actually drive one of your own cars. You've got a Renault, bright yellow Renault 5, right? What's your experience been like? I mean, do you have an understanding of why people would be reluctant to buy a smaller car? Do you suffer range anxiety as you drive around?
No,
or?
I suffer anxiety for other issues right now.
Okay.
But, I have a bigger problem than. But I think it's the best small car in the world right now. So it's a great car. It's really fun. I mean,
I would be surprised if you would say different.
No, but it's a fact. It's a fact. No, I think, I mean, driving electric is actually pretty pleasant, right? So you have acceleration, you have silence, and the thing is, we are also using the switch to electric cars to actually make products more intelligent, okay, with the software and and all the sensors, etc. So I think it's a combination of software and hardware that makes those products really an iPhone rather than a Nokia with the buttons and the green screen, right? So I think we have for sure we can bring something valuable to the consumer with this kind of technological switch. We just have to get this starting, and I think we took a generation of delay, because of historical reason, in fact. I mean, you were talking about the mistakes of the European, I'm not sure it was a mistake. At that time, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years ago, Europe was on diesel. Even though the governments were like favoring the diesel by putting lower tax on the fuel. So it was a kind of a system thing where we were trying to, and a certain moment after the diesel scandal, then we had to switch. And then we believed into the silver bullet, and where we were saying, give us the chance to work on few technologies, right? So I'm not sure we made a mistake. It was the sense of the story, right? But for sure, we lost a generation, and we need now to do 2 generations in one. I agree with you that, let's say, we don't invest in innovation enough in Europe, in general. Okay, in general, this is not true for the automotive industry, but still, the automotive industry is 1/3 of the R&D in Europe. 1/3 of the private R&D. So there are other people that are not investing so much in R&D. I actually put like 10% of my turnover on the thing, and we actually never stopped. And we changed the mix, and since 4 or 5 years, the majority of the R&D investment goes in software and energetic transition. And then the last point I want to bounce back on is, there is a kind of a mood in which someone will say, yeah, but these guys, they made so much money, and now it's time that they pay the fines, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, in general, the automotive industry is not one of the most profitable industry. It's very tough. I mean, it can go very high, but it can go also very easily very bad. Right now, everybody is on a profit warning, okay, except us. The thing, I mean, when we see the next 24 months, it's going to be rock and roll on this side. And I remember when we were into the COVID, I mean, a company like mine was losing during the COVID time 40 million euro a day. We lost 8 billion euro in one semester, okay? And everybody was saying that the automotive industry would die with the COVID because we had to close plants. And now we were able, okay, by increasing the price of the cars, accepting that we should produce less cars, we made the miracle of making money even in a very turbulent environment. With the market where we lost in the last 4 years in Europe 15 million cars. So instead of, congratulating us as a business leader that we didn't close the whole operation, now you're saying that we made too much money? I think we did a good job. Now we have the resources, the cash, to continue to invest on those new technology. The worst thing would have been, I didn't close one single plant in Europe. Despite the fact that I was losing 8 billion euro in one semester for the COVID story. So I think we did a good job. But it's not a very profitable industry. That's why also the financial markets are not investing in us. You look at a company like ours, 125 years of history. We do 60 billion turnover. We're worth 15 billion, 15. You take some Chinese whatever EV that sell 200,000 cars, and they're worth 30 billion. You look at Tesla, they sell less than 2 million cars, and they're worth $700 billion. So there is also somehow, we have to bring the financial investors back into the automotive industry, understanding that we'll be one of the drivers of this, let's say, digital and energetic transition.
So what are you looking for from the European authorities, from national authorities, build out of charging infrastructure, financial help, regulatory help? What's the ask from your side for governments?
I think all of it. We need a plan. We need to discuss a plan and to try to execute where everybody makes his part and makes his job, okay? But you have to go. You have to have a kind of a value chain, let's say, approach. Even if you look at the construction of the Commission, Sigrid, how many DGs will have to handle, our case? 7, 8 or 9. Okay, so you actually have in the organization 8 or 9 DGs that are in front of us. How to connect the dots? Because we look at the value chain. We look horizontally to the thing, and this is typically from an organization point of view is a challenge, right?
Audience
We need an
pleasing
auto
comment.
czar.
You've mentioned competitiveness, and there's also been talk of battery technology. What is where does Europe stand compared to China and the United States when it comes to investment, when it comes to controlling the battery value chain, and setting up a competitive infrastructure for the car industry compared to those two other blocks? How far behind is Europe, and what needs to be done?
First of all, we have to have a level playing field, and I can support the decision of the Commission to launch this anti-subsidy probe into Chinese EV imports. I think Europe must stop to be the fool of the village, and it's no time to try to have the same condition. And if social rights are not respected in China, or if they are building cars in bad environmental condition, we have to put charges so that we can have a fair competition with China. And I think it's a new thing that we have to support, and all my support to the Commission, therefore. And we cannot play the same game as China. It's not an option. We cannot afford to subsidize our industry or electric car purchase all over in the EU. As I said, public investment has to go to infrastructure, also charging infrastructure, and collective transport. And yes, we have to deal with the car industry. We have a new commissioner. There will be a hearing in the European Trans Committee. I'm quite surprised to see that he is not only in charge of train infrastructure, but also, and it's new, about the car industry. I don't know if you have a vision on what he has to deal with, and I think, yes, it can be positive if it's to put all the European car industry together and to have a strategy, and to defend ourselves against China, to invest in research and development, to have the good cooperation, to have more affordable car, and I'm looking forward to ride a Renault 5 with great pleasure.
I'll bring it to you.
Yeah, and it's a new step we have to put, but we lost so many times against China because a lack of investment in research and development. We have to know to deliver, and I hope European Commission and the new commissioner can help the sector.
Virginius, do you think that Europe has sort of lost the thread? If you look at the amount of money that the Americans are investing in the IRA, the amount of money that China is putting into it, the competitiveness of those two blocks, and Europe's stronger focus on regulation and an investment, that Europe is behind and is not really in the correct game to catch up?
Well, there are a couple things. So access to capital is a big Achilles heel for us. And I think many overlooked what firepower IRA really had. If you look at Tesla, they subsidizing so many things in their value chains, from gigafactories to chargers to cars and etc. So of course that drives down their price significantly. Same with Chinese, which they do mostly with state subsidies. And then, of course, that's why I'm saying that we need to reach climate neutrality, but it does not necessarily mean only EV, because on EV we find ourselves on a weak foot. If you look at the Critical Raw Materials Act, if you look at the NZ proposals, well, there is not so many things that you can invent in order for Renault, for example, to secure a supply chain. You can probably do better in circularity, ensuring that what you have in the market you use for as long as possible, and that's what we did with the Batteries Act. You need to diversify as much as possible your supply chains, getting those materials from a broad suppliers as possible, even so that you can see that a lot of them, they are controlled by China. And then third thing, if you find something in Europe, you need to open and extract it here in Europe. There is not so many things that you can do. So knowing these three options, EV is a very difficult option for us. It will be always a very difficult option, but currently this is the technology that is on the table, where, as I said, we can definitely do much more. On the price, here, I think, competition, for example, with the Chinese to the bottom for the price, we will never win it. I don't believe it, because it's just we are completely different. We have different labor standards. We have a completely standards in which that car has to be produced, and I'm very proud of those standards. I don't want to lower them. But that means additional costs in his balance sheet.
That's a very difficult ask to ask of consumers to pay that much
therefore,
more.
I don't believe in the competition to the bottom for the price. I believe in our excellence in R&D, where we have to put much more than we have done before, from the state side as well.
Thank you very much. I do think that that's going to be a difficult ask of consumers. I'm a motorcyclist and I ride a BMW, but I do look at the incoming Chinese motorbikes, and there's more and more of them coming into Europe, and they provide enormous sort of bang for the buck. And I can see that the legacy makers are terrified of what's happening, and I assume that similar things are happening in the car industry. Thank you. I'm really sorry we don't have longer for this panel, because I'm sure we could go on for much longer. Thank you very much for agreeing to take part in the panel. Europe basically built its industrial might on the internal combustion engine. Open question if that's going to be the case in a world of EVs. So thank you again for taking part in the panel. If you could please remain seated as the next session will take place. We're just going to do a very quick stage change, and our health editor, Helen Collis, will be moderating an interview with David Lowe, Ipsen's CEO, and the Vice President of FPA, the European Pharma Lobby. Thank you very much for your attention.